So welcome, everybody. For those of you I have not yet had the pleasure of meeting in person, my name is Jacqueline Baxter. I'm a senior digital strategist with Sitecore. I am based here in London, although as I'm sure you can tell from my accent, I was not born here. I was previously with Sitecore Americas, and they transferred me to London in the middle of the pandemic because that's how popular I am at work. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about the Sitecore MVP program. It's something I believe in very passionately. It's something that I was a part of, first as a Sitecore strategy MVP when I was part of Hedgehog development, and then when I joined Sitecore and found out that you cannot be a Sitecore employee and a Sitecore MVP, which seems a little ridiculous, but fine. Then I joined the MVP support programs. I'm currently a member of SMAC, which is the Sitecore Strategy MVP Advisory Committee. Oh, yes, it is a little temperamental. That's fun. So becoming a Sitecore MVP, an amazing achievement, an incredible achievement, something that people strive for all throughout the year, something that people really want to know a little bit more about how they can actually become a Sitecore MVP, which is a very reasonable thing. The application has tripped up a lot of very good people. The process is not necessarily as clear as we would sometimes like it to be. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to do tonight. One of the things that my colleagues and I would like to bring some clarity to the process, make sure that we're explaining not only how you can become a Sitecore MVP, but what the steps are to start building that application. Traditionally, the application process runs from November 1st to November 30th. This year, the application process ran from November 15th to November 30th because, you see, we have realized that most people fill out the application in the last 5 days anyway. So there's really no point in having it open for a whole month when everybody's just going to log on the 25th, fill out their application, and send it in. But this, as all of you very smart people probably have noted, is December 1st. So it is the perfect time to start thinking about how you're going to build your Sitecore MVP application for the year to come. So the first thing that I want to make very clear has to do with nominations. Now this year, you didn't actually need a nomination. Everybody's going, oh, if I'd known I could just apply. See, this is why you should follow me on Twitter. I talk about literally nothing else. We're hopeful, very, very hopeful, that by removing the nomination, we will actually have removed a barrier to access, that will have increased diversity, that will have an increased level of high quality applications. If that doesn't happen and we get an increased level of poorer applications, then we might go back to the nomination process. That's not going to be decided probably until October of next year. If you do need to be nominated, you can be nominated by a current Sitecore MVP or by any Sitecore employee. Any Sitecore employee can nominate you. That's something that I think a lot of people don't know, or that enough people didn't know, that it doesn't have to be just an existing MVP. It can be a Sitecore employee. Please feel free to reach out to me, to one of my colleagues on SMAC, to a lot of people in this room. We'd be glad to talk you through it. And of course, if you don't need a nomination, it all goes much more smoothly. You can just log on and apply. Being a Sitecore MVP means contributing to the Sitecore community. Full stop. That's what the entire application is evaluated based on. So we're good, right? I can go? It's totally clear. Everybody completely understands. Just in case you want some more specifics, it does require things that are provable. So generally speaking, we're talking about a blend of online and offline activities. And a really quick disclaimer, nothing about what I'm going to say here is set in stone. There's a lot of circumstances under which these specific things might not apply. I'll talk about a few of them, but each application is evaluated on its own merits. I can tell you that for sure because I'm one of the people who evaluates the applications. So keep in mind these are sort of guidelines. If you've ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one, the good one, they're more like guidelines. We do tend to tell people that what we want is a blend of online and offline activities as, again, one of the guidelines. You can think of that as being 3 or more blogs or pieces of written content and 2 or more presentations. Please, please, please show your work. Send us a link. to the blog. Send us a link to the white paper. Put that in your application. The faster it is for us to validate that you actually did the thing that you said you did, the more likely it is that that will be counted toward your MVP. Customer case studies do count, especially if they're public. We love to see that. We do like to see thoughtful and thorough answers to the open-ended questions. The application is the same every year. They've asked the same open-ended questions every year since I've applied, every year that I've evaluated them. They're always the same. There's never going to be a nasty surprise. But something better than, I'm the best. I'm sure you are, but that's not something I can necessarily evaluate, much as I would like to. Consider the rule of more than one on all of this. More than one blog, more than one presentation. Again, the combo of 3 is something to think about. And this is especially important for those who are going for Sitecore Strategy MVP. This content needs to be Sitecore specific. I do love to see more general stuff. I write more general stuff, more general thought leadership stuff. There's a lot of topics related to customer trust, customer privacy. Love to see that, but this is a Sitecore award. And that means that the content we're evaluating you on needs to be Sitecore specific. If you want to include extra stuff, that never hurts. Plus, I always love to read it because I'm a big nerd. But keep in mind, Sitecore specifics are the way to go. There we go. So again, think about proof points, think about customer case studies, and the thoughtful, thorough answers. The number of times I have seen, I'm really great and I contribute to the Sitecore community, and that's the end of the answer to the question. It's like, I'm sure that's true, but it doesn't help me. Help me help you. Thoughtful, thorough answers. So, I'm going to dive a little bit more deeply into the content guidelines because I always get questions about this, so I thought I'd just blow this section out. Love that ringtone, by the way. So thinking about 3+ blogs a year, one of the things I like to suggest is creating a series to get more out of a topic that you're passionate about. Those of you who work in content, those of you who work in digital strategy probably know very intimately, people don't read long articles, much as I wish that they did. Much as I wish that everybody would read the 3,000 word piece, that's the combo I want, that I wrote about digital trust and privacy. Nobody does. They read about the first 500 words if you're lucky, and maybe they skip to the end. So if you have a 4,000-word treatise on a really excellent topic that you're really passionate about, chunk that out, break that out into smaller pieces, put out a blog series. You can definitely leverage your company blog. That is fantastic. Please do make sure that you are credited. We have seen applicants send in, oh, I wrote this. We go to the company blog and it just says written by company. That doesn't help me either. I have to know that you're the one who wrote it. That's the only way for me to evaluate it. And please do feel free to submit blogs. SMAC has a newsletter and an email that I'm going to put up at the end for shameless self-promotion. We love to push out those topics. We love to create greater visibility. We're always willing to help out, to signal boost, using hashtags, especially if you're posting on Twitter or LinkedIn, always helpful. So presentations, again, 2+ a year. This really should go without saying, but if you didn't actually present it, it doesn't count. I do see a lot of people saying, I submitted for Symposium, which is excellent. Please don't stop doing that. But if you weren't accepted for Symposium and you didn't actually present on the topic, it doesn't count as a presentation. So keep in mind, anything that you submit to Symposium or to a subcon that isn't accepted, and that happens a lot, they get a lot of presentations, a lot of submissions, can be repurposed for a user group like this one. If you present virtually, a lot of user groups have gone virtual. I don't expect that to change anytime soon. Anything like that would count, but you do actually have to deliver the presentation in order for the presentation to count. And again, repurposing that content is golden. I see a lot of presenters, a lot of existing MVPs who will put together one presentation and they'll just sort of tour it around to all of the user groups. That's awesome. And that does count as separate presentations. Those presentations do tend to evolve over time. There's no reason why that wouldn't count. There we go. So this one is a sticking point. This is the thing. If I had to pick the one thing that people email me about the most after every MVP season, it would be this. Customer and internal presentations cannot necessarily count And the reason is it's really hard for us to evaluate those things. It does say here on the strategy MVP category, which is especially true, but that does go for technical and for ambassador as well. Because they almost always take place behind a closed door and often under some form of NDA, we can't evaluate it, and it doesn't contribute to community knowledge. And again, that's the goal of the Sitecore MVP award, is to reward communication within the community. If you are able to record that presentation and put it up on YouTube, if you're able to turn it into a blog, if you're able to take it out to a user group, then it would count. I do understand that a lot of us, all of us in fact, put a lot of effort into our jobs. We put a lot of effort into making sure that our clients see success with their platforms, and that is amazing. That is also why you get a paycheck. So in order to get an award, you have to go a little bit further, just that one step further. And we don't say that to be mean. We say that because it's really the only way for us to evaluate that the content is pertinent, that the content contributed to community development, if that makes sense. This answer is a little bit different for ambassadors, and the ambassador category is much more based around evangelism and being a brand ambassador for Sitecore. So when it comes to the ambassador category, this answer can get a little fuzzier, but if you're going for a technical MVP or a strategy MVP, this one's pretty firm. Social sharing. We love social sharing. We love to see it. I especially love to see it. Tweeting is great. Please do add context. Don't just retweet. We see that a lot. We see, oh, I signal boosted, which is fantastic, but it doesn't tell me what you think about the topic. It doesn't show me that you're contributing and participating. LinkedIn, again, same thing. Sharing is great, but add a little bit of context to the post that you're sharing. Snag a few of those URLs. If you have a Twitter thread that you really got in depth with some people in the community, snag that URL, throw it in a Word document, throw it in Pages, throw it in something so that you can find it easily when it comes to be time to format your application. That way you just grab the URL, throw it in there, problem solved. Please update your GitHub or don't use it. There are so many applications where it's like, here's my GitHub, and it hasn't been updated since 2015. It's like, I could have a GitHub that hasn't been updated since 2015. You're being evaluated on the content and the activity of the past year. So if you haven't had an update since 2015, you don't need to put your GitHub on there. If you have, great, that's what we like to see. But it doesn't actually help you to have a GitHub on there where there is no update. And with Slack, I hope everyone is a member of the community Slack. If you're not a member of the community Slack, we'd love to have you. Please reach out to us so we can figure out a way to get you in. Please make sure that you are participating and not just lurking. With Slack especially, the only way we have to evaluate that is by actually going in and seeing how often we can find you in the thread. It's not the best system, I'll admit, but if you haven't participated at all and we can't find you, we're much more likely to say, well, then I can't say for sure that this is true. And make sure that you're tagging people. Hashtag SMAC, hashtag Sitecore MVP is always a popular one so that we can search that out pretty quickly. Again, active and consistent participation. And the GitHub one really can't be overstated. It's sad, it makes me sad. So, tips and tricks, things to do. Do reach out to the Sitecore user groups. They're virtual now, so many more of them are virtual. Many of them are scheduling presenters months and months in advance, so you can get yourself a presentation schedule set up pretty far into the future. Start tracking your activity now. The application doesn't change significantly. Again, it especially doesn't change in what it asks for in your online and offline activity, so start keeping track of that now. Just throw it in a Word doc on your desktop. You do need both online and offline activity. Again, that's not a super hard and fast rule. Somebody who's written 13 blogs, 2 white papers, and an ebook is probably not going to be dinged because they didn't have an opportunity to present once. If one category far outweighs the other, you're probably still okay. But for most people, a blend of online and offline activity is going to be what you're looking for. Please make sure that you're getting recommendations if we do need nominations from Sitecore MVPs and Sitecore employees. That always helps to have a blend of those recommendations. And do feel free to ask for help. Again, I'm going to put up the SMAC email. I reviewed several applications this season, just people sending them to me asking what we thought. My colleagues did the same. I know various people in this room have mentored other Sitecore MVPs, have reviewed their applications for them. We're always happy to help. I can't say the same for necessarily everyone in the community because the world is wide and I cannot speak for everyone, but most people that you reach out to are going to be very happy to take a look at your application. And do try and space content out throughout the year. Only I call it, oh no, October, but we do see it. We do notice when it hits October and all of a sudden everybody's just like, boom, here's a bunch of blogs. It's like, gosh, is there something coming up that you want all those blogs to be public for? Something coming? It's not necessarily going to prevent you from getting the MVP because you did produce the content, but it does make those of us who are evaluating go, okay, but there are like 11 other months in the year. Here we go. We're going to talk about what not to do. Yay, the don'ts. Please don't phone it in. This happens every year, and every year it's so depressing. Every year there's at least a couple people who just, you know what it is? It's like when you went to university and you wrote a paper at like 2 a.m. that was due at 6 a.m. the next morning, and you turned it in knowing that it wasn't necessarily your best work, but hoping that nobody would notice. It's like that, except worse because all of us notice, I promise. Please don't do that. Make sure that you give yourself at least a couple of days head start. If you're working on your application throughout the year, this is going to be much easier for you because you're going to be able to just copy paste a lot of the answers in. Don't list everything from past years. This happens especially when content creation and participation in the community is very light from the year before. If you start going back to like 2018, 2017, if that's what you need to make your application robust enough that you feel like it will be considered, it's time to look at your life and your choices and think about doing just a little bit better for next year. I don't mean to be harsh, but seriously, I love that you presented at Symposium in 2017. That isn't going to count for your 2022 or 2023 Sitecore MVP application. This one is very specific, fortunately, because it doesn't happen very often. But if you are an existing MVP or you get the MVP award and it comes with a warning, please don't ignore the warning. We issue the warning to help you. We want you to succeed. We really do. None of us like saying no. We want everybody who applies to become a Sitecore MVP. We want it to be so easy to just blow through the applications and go yes to everybody. Problem solved. If you have gotten a warning, it's because something about your application almost wasn't good enough. It's because we gave you a little bit of grace on something, and we want you to know that that grace was given and that it will not necessarily be extended again. Please don't ignore the warnings. We give them because we want to help you. Do not use work from home as an excuse. It was barely an excuse in 2020, but we tried to be understanding. It is not a valid excuse in 2021, not with how virtual everything's been. Believe me, I am more ready than almost anyone in the world to be done with this pandemic. If I could end it through the sheer force of my will, I would. Because we can't do that, the world has adapted. There are options for you. It will not be considered an excuse for this current application season that is just closed, and it will not be considered an excuse for the next application season. So just don't say it. Just don't do it. And then don't provide blog links with no titles or author credits or dates. The dates is a big one because corporate blogs sometimes will scrape the date off in order to make the content more evergreen. That's problematic because, again, we do need to know that it was created in this year. And as much as we love and trust you, we do need to have an actual source. Show your work. All right, so now we've got a couple of common questions. So what does evangelism really mean? That's a good one. And we've spent a lot of time this year, especially as a community organization within Sitecore, figuring that out. And essentially what we think is that it means being an advocate for the product publicly and not just within your company or to your customers. It means taking part in external marketing events. It means writing and delivering thought leadership that promotes the value of Sitecore, not always just the technical of how to do it, but specifically the value and the reason why you want to do it that way. Essentially, we think that evangelists are teaching others their path. They're teaching others what worked for them and why. The difference between a strategy MVP, and an ambassador MVP. And I will be the very first one to admit that this one's been very fuzzy for a while. We hope that we're clearing it up for this year. But it does have to do with community involvement. Generally speaking, an ambassador MVP has a lower content and community participation threshold because it does fundamentally rely on the person being a brand ambassador for Sitecore. A strategy MVP is much more likely to be contributing content similarly to a technology MVP, although obviously in the strategy and marketing field. Customer presentations. So this goes back to my previous slide about how they almost never count, and that's because they're impossible for us to evaluate. It's not because we don't like them, it's not because we don't think you did a great job with them, but it needs to be public in order for it to be contributing to the development of the community. What about Sitecore lunches? We love them, love to see them. Everyone should go to one, they're super fun, we enjoy them. If you present at a Sitecore lunch, then that would count as a presentation. If you're going and participating, even if you're participating consistently, maybe not as much. It's a good thing to put on your application. It's definitely a good thing to do. You'll learn a lot. It's not necessarily enough to get you to an MVP all by itself. So as a supplementary activity, I can get behind it, and I would definitely encourage it. As a solo activity, you know, probably not quite enough. Oh, conferences. Remember conferences and planes and human interaction? Conferences are amazing. We love to see them. We can't wait to see you there. If you're presenting, fantastic. That would count in part of the presentation column. If you're there and staffing the booth, that is awesome. You also got a sweet trip out of it, and it's part of your job. So again, we love to see it, but you need to present in order for it to be considered something that we can evaluate separately. And then what is a good balance of activity? I think I've elaborated on that quite a bit, but just sort of keep the rule of more than one in mind. 3 or more blogs a year, 2 or more presentations, or at least more than one of each in order to get yourself into the running. And as I promised, shameless self-promotion because no presentation is complete without it. We've got the strategy MVP email. That goes to not just me, although I am charming. It goes to all of us who are part of SMAC. So someone will get back to you. It might be me, it might be one of my colleagues in APJ or in AMS, probably depending on where you are located. We're always happy to help, we're happy to brainstorm, we're happy to run through things, happy to talk through things. Again, we love to see people succeed. I personally would love to see the strategy MVP category double in the next 2 years. Last year we had, I believe, 36. I'm hoping this year we'll get to 50. If we could break 50, that would just make my day. And if next year we could get to 70 or 80, that would be absolutely incredible. We want to see people succeed. If you're interested in this, I'm always happy to chat. I've realized now I did not do a very good job of shameless self-promotion because I didn't put any of my contact information on this slide. But you can reach me through the SMAC email, or Jeremy or Kate or several people in this room have my contact information. Again, I'm all over Twitter, I'm all over Slack. I'm hard to miss if you're looking for me. Thank you all so much.